Welcome to the latest edition of the Black and Gold Breakdown on the channel. I'm Jared Bailey, behind the Steel Curtain USA Today. That is my friend Nick Farbaugh from Steelers Now. Always good to see you, buddy. How's it going?
It's going well, man. It's going well. Thanks for having me on.
Absolutely, man. No, it's always good to talk to you. It's a rainy day in the Berg today. We got apparently tornado warnings over in Ohio. Then we're kind of feeling the effects of that with the rain and stuff. But with you and I haven't had an actual face to face conversation about the things that have been happening with the Steelers since probably around a month ago at the combine.
Yep.
And since then, a lot's happened where we were at the presser, Omar Khan saying, "Oh, we got full faith in Kenny. We'll be open to whatever options that we're out there at quarterback to bring in a veteran." And then a few short days later, Kenny Pickett gets traded to the Eagles. The Steelers, signed Russell Wilson. And then once Pickett was gone, they trade for Justin Fields. And now this quarterback room looks a whole lot different. In terms of your opinion, just on the state of affairs with the quarterback position with Pittsburgh, thoughts on Russ, thoughts on Justin Fields, thoughts on what's going to happen in the immediate and far future?
Well, they got better. I'll say that. They got better at the position, which I think is the first thing you have to say.
Yeah.
Is they have a veteran who was better than their quarterback last year, and they have a young upside option who was better than their quarterback last year. So they have two guys that they upgrade upon, and they have an upside option. They have a win now option. So they have two different options, which I like. We'll kind of see. I guess both of them can be beyond this year solutions, depending on how they play. Like if Russ plays well and regain some of his form and you want to sign him to a multi-year deal, I think that can be done too. But long-term answer, you can at least find that in Justin Fields. I don't think it's a good quarterback room. I think it's a better quarterback room, but it's still not a good quarterback room. Like
Sure.
Russ and Fields have both struggled a lot in recent years. Fields has really struggled with kind of ripping the ball over the middle of the field, taking really bad sacks, taking a lot of negative plays. Russ hasn't thrown many interceptions, but obviously takes a lot of sacks. Is limited by his skill set just because of his height. Has lost some of the athleticism. So his dynamic ability outside the pocket isn't fully there anymore. It was more there last year when he kind of really started to concentrate on himself and lost some weight and really strengthened his lower body. So maybe there's something there that can be unlocked. I think that they went from one of the bottom five quarterback options in the NFL to just kind of okay, they are the 2021st best quarterback now in the NFL, which is an upgrade. Again, it's an upgrade. It's just, is it such a huge upgrade that, their quarterback purgatory woes are solved? No, but it's good GMing because you get Russell Wilson on a veteran minimum contract, and then you get Justin Fields for a conditional sixth. I mean, that is good GMing by Omar Khan. And I do feel like the one thing is there really wasn't a good answer this offseason for them to fix the quarterback position long term. Like the best option you could have thrown out there was Kirk Cousins, which makes sense, but you saw what Kirk got. They were never paying Kirk Cousins that.
Yeah.
And honestly, I don't blame them for that. I understand Kirk was great coming off the Achilles, though. It's a risk. Like that contract Atlanta gave him is a risk, 100 million guaranteed. They were never giving Kirk Cousins that. So at the very least, they have kind of quelled it for a year, and they have an option now to potentially get some high upside for the future. But if not next year, I think they are setting themselves up for well next year to at least be in a position to where they can make a decision for the future at that position.
I think in my head right now, if I had to bet on how things are going to go, I think Russ is the starter week 1, and then by week 9, Justin Fields is the starter. Not necessarily saying that the Steelers are horrible, because we saw last year where they were 6-4 after 10 games. They just lost to Cleveland, and the offense was terrible. So we've seen that they can still win games even if the offense isn't playing up to par. But if there is a world where Russell Wilson isn't elevating the offense to where it needs to be, you got Justin Fields on the bench. You might as well see what you have in him. So I think that there is, by midseason, not to say that Russell Wilson would be horrible, but even if it's just like, okay, this is going okay, but why not see what you have in Justin Fields? I feel like they would be doing themselves a disservice if they don't at least see what they have.
I do think that, you know, the Steelers don't prioritize long-term vision over short-term. So I'm not sure we're going to see Justin Fields this year.
Yeah.
I don't think it's a guarantee. If Russ could do
Let
what
me
he did last,
let me ask you to follow this up though. If we don't see Justin Fields, like in terms of being a starter or anything this year, do you think that there's a chance that they would? They're obviously they're not going to pick up that his 5th-year option, but do you think that there's a chance that he would come back in free agency even if we don't see him as a starter at all?
I think they would be interested in bringing him back. Now, would he be interested in coming back? Because he'll have
That's the
suitors.
thing. Yeah. Yep.
I think that would be the question. Um, I mean, listen, if Russ gives them what he gave Denver last year, and he goes 25 touchdowns, 7 picks. I mean, let's be real here. The Steelers won 10 games through ball control last year,
Mm-hmm.
through good defense, through the run game. If Russell Wilson gives them 25 touchdowns through the air and what he did last year, I mean, they're gonna be a playoff team probably. Like
Yeah.
that's legitimately that he's not gonna get pulled for that. Now, maybe you watch him do that and then you don't extend him and then Justin Fields steps in at 25. Like that's where that could happen. I don't know how it's going to play out. I can see a scenario in camp two where Justin Fields is just better. I've said that before. I think you can easily make the argument watching both these guys' films last year that Justin Fields was better.
Mm-hmm.
But is he better for long term? Yes. Is he better for short term? I think that's going to be the question because there's no question who's going to give you more negative plays. It's going to be Justin Fields, but he'll also give you more pop and sizzle.
Right.
But the Steelers under Mike Tomlin have consistently gone for the guy that cannot kill them. Don't kill them
Yeah.
at quarterback, and that's been a big part. I mean, that's why Mason Rudolph even got a chance. Mitch Trubisky killed them. Too many turnovers.
Yeah.
Why Kenny Pickett was going to get a chance with what he showed through everything Kenny Pickett did. He didn't throw picks and he didn't fumble the ball. That's what he's really good at. And Russell Wilson, I think if he can do that, probably will have a pretty good chance of just holding on to this job for a good bit. Especially because I think the Steelers' run game is going to be pretty good. So I think he'll get some adequate support from that.
Yeah, and that's a good segue into what's next because there's still things that they need to figure out offensive line wise. Where center still a glaring hole, and then whatever they decide to do at tackle, whether it be move Broderick Jones to left and draft somebody at right, or keep Dan Moore at left and Broderick Jones at right, which isn't the option that really I don't think anybody wants. But you and I know that Dan Moore is a popular guy in the locker room and would be a fine depth guy to have behind whoever they would bring in. But having Dan Moore as a starting left tackle again, I think would just be irresponsible. Offensive line wise, though, I mean, we're seeing names whether it be Amarius Mims, Graham Barton, Zach Frazier. I mean, there's going to be a ton of guys in those first 2 rounds that are going to be attached to the Steelers for obvious reasons. If you had to guess now, what are the Steelers doing in rounds 1 and 2 position wise?
I think that they've backed themselves into a pretty tough spot just because trading Deontay Johnson gave them a huge need at wide
Yes.
receiver.
Yeah.
It is a massive need, and they have not filled it yet. And so they need a wide receiver too. I get it's a deep draft, but like that feels like a top 2 round pick to me, And look at who they're meeting with: Pearsall, Leggett, Corley, Roman Wilson. These are guys at 51 that probably won't be around at 84. So I don't know. I'll tell you this. I think tackle in round 1 looks very likely with what they have shown on the pro day circuit. They've hosted Taliesin Fuaga, they've hosted Amarius Mims. I believe they are going to host JC Latham and Troy Fatanu and
Mm-hmm.
those guys at some point, maybe even Olu Fashanu. They might go all the way down there. Tyler Guyton, they've shown interest in for like all of these guys they've shown interest in. It's painting a pretty clear picture to me that I think I'm not going to say, tackle is going to be the first round pick just because I think there's options there. Obviously, there it could be center if they trade
Yeah.
back or whatever, right? Like Arthur Smith said, Graham Barton's pro day, like that could be the pick. But if
Sure.
we're going by Tomlin and Khan's attendance at pro days, they only went to 4 this year, and corner and tackle are the overwhelming favorites at 20, which makes sense. It seems like Omar Khan values positional value or premium players. And is there a premium player at center to where he's going to kind of discard tackle, corner, receiver value? I'm not sure we're going to see that. And you look at the Eagles too. I wrote this yesterday that I don't see center in round one because the Eagles just didn't take interior linemen that early. They took them, Landon Dickerson was, I think, like pick 37th
Mhm.
overall. I still think what we're going to see is, I think tackle round one. I would say Amarius Mims is probably the likeliest guy right now. If he's there, JC Latham probably number two. But I think tackles one, and then second round, I could see them trading up for a center. I definitely could. I think that is very possible where they come up the board and get a Zach Frazier, or if this noise about Jackson Powers Johnson falling a little bit
Yeah.
is true, could they come up and get Jackson Powers Johnson? Yes, I think they could. And so I don't know what their plan at center is yet, because again, I told you, like, look at the receivers who they're showing interest in, and it's either one of those sixth round picks, like a Jordan Whittington or a Taj Washington,
Mhm.
or the second round pick. At the third round, maybe you can argue, like a Jalen McMillan, maybe Roman Wilson falls to there, maybe. But Corley, Leggett, Pearsall, we're talking about this kind of group here. Jalen Polk, these are all guys. Troy Franklin, Xavier Worthy, AD Mitchell. Like, these are guys that they've shown interest in. Keon Coleman, like, those are guys that are going to be either 51 or earlier.
Mhm.
So receiver at round two, I mean, is that possible? Are they just going to completely disregard the center position in the first two rounds without a starting center? Is it possible? I guess it depends on their thoughts outside of the top three. Do
Yeah,
they believe that
they'd be
Van
that's what I'm
Wayne?
saying. They'd be really banking on Van Pran to fall to what, 84 then
It
and take
depends
him
though. I
there.
mean, other options. Do they like Dom Puny? Do they like Hunter Norzad? Do they like Bo Limmer? Do they like Mason McCormick? Like,
Mhm.
we're talking there. It's a deep center draft. It's just, are those guys ready day one? I don't think
Right.
so. I think there's three true center options that'll be ready day one. That's Barton, Frazier, JPJ, and Van Pran, I think, can probably do it. But if you wait until the third round and Van Pran's gone and you select Mason McCormick at 84,
Mhm.
I mean, you might be starting Nate Herbig week one. Like, that's a realistic possibility. And I just don't know if that's what they want to do, or, maybe they're waiting on Connor Williams. I don't know what the plan is there. Are they going to sign, is Mason Cole coming back? Are they signing Brian Allen?
Brian Allen's really the only realistic option for me that's still on the market that would make any sort of sense, because Williams is still coming off the injury. Don't know how good he's going to be. I think it would be incredibly irresponsible to have Mason Cole back in there, because there's a reason that they got rid of him so early in the offseason. It's because he's not good. So
Yes.
I think that Brian Allen's the only realistic veteran option on the market right now in terms of bringing in somebody from the outside.
Listen, I just don't know what the plan at center is yet, because
Yeah.
they went to Zach Frazier and Jackson Powers Johnson's pro day and Graham Barton's pro day. So they
Mhm.
are scouting this early group of centers. And they went to Cedric Van Pran's pro day. So my intuition tells me they are going to take one of those top four centers. Like, that is what my intuition tells me. So you told me what their first 2 round picks are, despite the overwhelming kind of interest in receivers in that range. I'm going to say tackle center. Kind of feels right to me right now, but I
I'd
don't know.
also
Wait on tackle too.
I'd also like to think that they may have learned their lesson from the Kendrick Green selection on waiting for a center. Not to saying that, any of these guys are going to be as bad as Kendrick Green was, but, waiting for a guy and, just banking on a mid round center, being able to come in and start right away. I mean, that's bit them in the butt before. I think when you talk about the receivers, because it is a very deep class, and the last few classes have been really deep at receiver. I think there's just more of what we're seeing now is that the receiving class is typically going to be good and deep. I think that, and you can tell me how you think about this. I wouldn't be surprised if they double dipped at receiver at some point, just because you look at the signings that they've made, and the guys that they have on the roster with Calvin Austin, Quez Watkins, Van Jefferson, Marquez Callaway, Denzel Mims. I think that a lot of Steelers fans are a little bit higher on Calvin Austin than the Steelers are on Calvin Austin. I don't think he's a third receiving option in the offense. I think he's going to be competing for the fourth spot, be a punt returner, get X amount of touches during the season. But I don't think he's going to be one of the predominant receiving options in the offense. So I think if you get your outside option, but then if you wanted to come back in the fourth round and take a Malik Washington out of Virginia to be your slot guy, I think that's very much on the table.
Yeah. So, I mean, let's say that they do go O line. I think that's very possible where they go tackle
Yeah.
center.
Yep.
Um, right. So I'm just looking at the consensus mock draft board right now. It's pretty accurate. Like generally, there are some guys that are outliers, but if you're sitting at 84 and you're the Steelers, you potentially are looking at Tez Walker, Jermaine Burton, Jalen McMillan, Brendan Rice, Javon Baker, Johnny Wilson, Malik Washington. That's kind of your area there. If you have to wait till round 3 to address receiver 2 and land one of those guys, you kind of feel like you have to double dip to me. Like I feel
I
like
agree.
you have to.
Especially if they take someone like Baker, who I think him and George Pickens' games are very similar, where they're very much deep ball threats. That's why I was kind of concerned about the Mike Williams ideas, because okay, him and Pickens kind of do the same thing, where that's great that they can beat you over the top, but they don't have anybody in the underneath game that can be that guy on the perimeter. So that I don't know, man. I think that somebody like that, like Baker, to pair with Pickens, it just wouldn't make sense to me.
Well, I will say this, they're looking at every single body type. There is
Yeah.
no, like, trend in their interest, which leads me to believe that double dipping is a very real possibility because you're not looking at Pearsall, Leggett, Coleman, Franklin, Worthy, A.D. Mitchell, Brian Thomas,
Mhm.
plus Baker and Washington and all of these guys that we are talking about, like they went to Tez Walker's pro day, went to Malachi Corley's, Jermaine Burton, like Jordan Whittington, like all these guys are different styles of players. So that to me tells me they're not looking for a specific style, but what they are looking for is two different guys. And so
Mhm.
I do think that they are going to double dip. I'm not sure what they're looking for at the receiver 2 position. I don't think they're looking for a direct Deontay Johnson replacement. I mean, now not that there is really a guy that is like truly like Deontay Johnson
Yeah.
in this class, but I mean, it seems like in that range that we're talking about, that round 2-ish range, like a lot of yak guys between
Yeah.
Leggett and Corley. And Arthur Smith does have a lot of screen stuff in his offense, so that makes sense. But I mean, you could be going for a more physical guy too, where you go for a Roman Wilson who's kind of a little undersized but really physical, or a
Mi-
Pearsall who's
Mike T seemed to be interested in him in Mobile too. By the way, they had a little brief interaction down there.
and they were at his pro day. I mean,
Yeah.
that's another thing. I mean, if we're talking receivers, where Zani went, Arthur Smith went, and where Tomlin and Khan went, we're talking Lad McConkey, Roman Wilson,
The Texas
Jermaine Burton,
kids.
Tez Walker, all 3 Texas receivers, and Malachi Corley.
Yeah.
And so that is a wide range of players. I mean, those are very different players that we're talking about. And then you add the top 30s, and that's been different already. So I think receiver is a double dip position because they don't have a receiver 2 or 3 right now. Like
Yeah.
you can squint, and in the Arthur Smith offense where wide receiver 3 is essentially the 6th most used player in the
Yeah.
team, like you can squint and see a guy like Van Jefferson being the wide receiver 3. And you could see the Calvin Austin, Khalif Raymond comps where he just gets 1 or 2 deep targets a game where that
Mhm.
that could work. But like truly there's no 2. So again, I think one thing that we're talking about here is like the Steelers have so many needs that there's going to be a very big hole on this team at some point after the draft. Whether that's going to be receiver, at center, at tackle, at defensive line depth, at something like this is going to be slot corner. Like we're talking. They really need they like need 4 dudes. Like
Yeah.
they need a swing tackle, they need a slot corner, they need a center, and they need a receiver or 2. So there's so many needs, and we're going to kind of see here. But I think what's going to happen is, and this is just a prediction, is Whatever they don't draft early enough to kind of fully address is where that vet signing comes after the
Mm,
draft. Now that could be at center where, okay, maybe they draft Van Pran and then Brian Allen comes.
sure.
Or receiver, they have to wait till round 3. Maybe they get a Jermaine Burton. But maybe they look and Tyler Boyd's still out there. Maybe that reignites talks between them and Tyler Boyd or DJ Chark or someone like this that they really like that's out there. They bring them aboard. At tackle, I mean, maybe they get a tackle in the mid round, but there's an option for them out there. I don't know. Maybe Donovan Smith's out there
Mm,
still in June and they bring him aboard. Like, I think that's a possibility. Remember, they did that last year where
they did.
Chandon Sullivan got signed on draft day, I believe.
Yeah.
Marcus Golden got signed to boost depth after Quan Alexander got signed in camp.
In camp.
Like,
Yeah.
so they're not going to be done upgrading this team like truly until like week 1. So
And
I
still,
think
like we've also seen that trades are still going to be very much on the board. So if they, right now, their nickel, I think would Darius Rush be who they would put at nickel right now? Because I don't know who else they put there.
I don't know. They don't really have a nickel.
Yeah.
I mean, they do have like Joe Scott, who played
Mm.
for the Eagles and has nickel experience. It probably would be Darius Rush, I guess, but I'm assuming if they don't get a slot they like, they'll just re-sign Shannon Sullivan or re-sign Patrick Peterson or do
I think
something.
that's the most likely option is just bringing back Patrick Peterson on a cheap, 1 year deal, put him at nickel, and then call it a day.
Yeah, I think it's possible. I think they will draft a corner early enough in this draft.
Mm.
It's just like, here's the thing. Something's getting like laid out in slot corner. There is a slot corner market there right now. You have two familiar names, but you have guys like Kwan Williams out there. Like there are guys that are out there. And
Mm.
so theoretically, like they could easily sign a slot corner that can just kind of play in there. So I don't know. I mean, like, look, you're not gonna have another D lineman out there that you're gonna like love. So like D
Sure.
line depth is probably gonna be drafted in the top 4 rounds. Like it just probably is, and they have a big future need there. So they're probably gonna draft someone. It seems like they're gonna draft an inside linebacker. Like look at the interest trail on that. Like it
Mm.
certainly seems like an inside linebacker's coming, despite signing Patrick Queen. Cole Holcomb's recovery is up in the air. D
Yeah.
Rob's going to the last year of his deal. And really, Queen is on a glorified 1 year contract. Uh,
Yeah.
so like, I think we all expect Patrick Queen to be here for a long time, but like the concern of him being a Roquan kind of made guy, like the Steelers have in that contract, it's specifically structured for them to have an out. And
Mm.
so I think they're going to draft an inside linebacker pretty early. So again, something's coming out of this draft probably weaker than you thought it would, unless they trade back 20, maybe acquire another second round pick or an early third and just fill up on that.
I
Possible.
think that's the best thing that they could do is trade back and gain at least one, two other picks in this draft to try to add pieces and see what happens. Like if Tampa Bay wants to trade back from I think 27 or whoever's at 26, like if you move back a few spots and you're still going to have somebody there that you like to take at tackle or center, then why not do it just to gain the extra assets?
Yeah, I mean, it's possible. I do think that the fact they could get a tackle at 20 that in every other year they would have absolutely no chance of getting.
Sure.
If Latham's there, I think I have a hard time passing on him. Marius Mims, I have a hard time passing on him. But maybe they view, you know, the positions and they can trade back. I mean, if you trade back, to 27, 28 ish, I mean, that is a good range at that point to take Powers Johnson or
Mhm.
Barton or who DeJean or 80 Mitchell starts to look real nice in that range.
That's one of I think that's also on the table is that they surprise us, go receiver round one, tackle center, and rounds 2 and 3, and then maybe we see that double dip in round 4. But the other needs that you pointed out in terms of they might take a linebacker, might take some D line depth, corner still. There's a billion different things that they could do, but I don't think that receiver round one is completely a 0% chance.
I don't think it is. I just think they're in a real awkward range for receivers. I just
Mm,
because all the top 3 guys are going to be gone. Brian Thomas is the most obvious guy there, but is he there? I'm not
Yeah.
sure. Sure seems like the smoke to Indianapolis is pretty strong.
Mm,
That one. So I guess we'll kind of see. I guess AD Mitchell 20 is in play, but feels a little early to me for AD Mitchell. So that's why I feel like receivers a little less certain for round one, just because I don't feel like they're in like a great range for
sure.
a top guy at 20. But I could see them doing a ton of different things. I could see them taking corner round one. I really
I
could.
could
Like,
too.
listen, Terrion Arnold falls to 20. Like, yeah, I feel like Quinyon Mitchell's there at 20. Like, I feel like
Yeah.
do that. Like, it does feel like that could be a possibility. So, we're talking, 5 picks in the first 120 of this draft. That could be a tackle, receiver, center, D line, linebacker, corner D line. I mean, that could
Hmm.
be so many different things. Again, this is why I kind of think trading back is an attractive option. For example, 27 is Arizona. So Arizona wants to come up 7 spots and get somebody. Maybe they really like one of the corners and they
Hmm.
want to come up and Nate Wiggins is there, but they think Philly's going to take Nate Wiggins or someone like that's going to come up and get Nate Wiggins. They want to come up and get him. All right, well, you might be able to get 27 and 66. Like,
That and Arizona's a team that has a lot of draft capital that they could
they
be
do.
willing to part ways with. So that's a win-win situation if you're Arizona and Pittsburgh in that.
Yeah, it could happen where you maybe get an early third there, and then all of a sudden you have enough draft capital to fill in every
Yeah.
little bit. And then after the draft, again, I still expect this like post free agent wave. I think that's going to be something the Steelers look into. Omar Khan has been active in that kind of area many times before. With that,
And that's not new either. I mean, in terms of last year, you pointed out, the Quan Alexander and Shannon Sullivan signings, but even going back a few years, they brought Melvin Ingram in during camp. So
they
like the
Larry
good,
Ogunjobi after the draft. Remember,
yeah,
he got signed during that period.
they traded for Akella Weatherspoon well into the offseason. So
Yeah,
I mean, they're not against bringing in guys late.
I agree, and so I think most of the free agency stuff for now is going to die down. I think they're going to draft what they can, see how it plays out, fill in kind of the voids, and then they're going to they're going to take a back seat, scan, and kind of see where they need to add. Because remember, I mean, last year they drafted an outside linebacker to Herbig, and they still brought in Marcus Gold. So
Mm-hmm.
like that's still something they could do. They drafted Joey Porter Jr. and still brought in Shen Sullivan on day 3 of the draft. They do all this stuff for a reason. So I think that's going to be a key part to filling out this team because again, if you have a weakness at receiver still, and you took a round 3 receiver, like who's to say they don't go out and sign Tyler Boyd after the draft or sign DJ Chark or sign someone like that. So I think that could be something. I think you just got to look at the free agency classes right now and say where is it weak, where is it going to be tough to fill in, and I think center is like D line, like those 2 spots feel like spots they probably should draft. I just don't know how you go into week 1 with Nate Herbig as your starting
Yeah,
center,
I
and
don't either.
it's not really a slight to Nate Herbig. It's just one, he's really not a scheme fit for the scheme at center. And 2, he has 49 career snaps at center. He's
Crazy.
not a center. Like he's a guard. So like that's a tough thing to sell. And to me, last year in practice, even, when they are going through kind of the second team reps, like Herbig was guard all year. It was Cole running first and second team, or Ryan McCollum coming in. Like Herbig didn't practice a ton of center. So I just think it's like really hard for me to buy the Nate Herbig center stuff. So they back themselves into a corner where they kind of like have to draft a center
Is
at the top.
is there a world where they, maybe make a switch and have James Daniels be center and move Urbig to guard?
Nope, I don't
I
think
don't
so.
think I
I
don't
have
either.
not seen James Daniels take a snap of center in his
That's
entire.
the thing. I just don't think he wants to. Like, there's no interest there.
he's one of the rare players that is like a natural center and is actually better at guard. Like he is a better guard than center. I like you go back and watch the center tape and everybody kind of falls in love with his run game tape, but he is such a better pass protector at guard
Mm.
than he was at center. Maybe he could switch back now and be different, but I mean, dude, he's been playing there, at guard now for what, 3, 4
Yeah,
years.
yeah.
So at this point, he's a guard to me. I understand that they have a ton of center capable dudes. Like, actually, the entire interior O line is center capable. Sayamalo has played at center before.
Okay.
Like Spencer Anderson has played at center before. Like, none of them are natural centers though.
Yeah.
So, or at least guys that you look at and say, okay, they're starting their career, so let's get them to center. So that's like the one thing. What's the plan at center? I think that is the biggest thing. It's not a premium position, and I feel like some Steelers fans have kind of overvalued the center position just because the spectrum on center play for them has been Dermontti Dawson to Marquis Pouncey and then Kendrick Green to Mason Cole. Like, dude,
Yeah.
insane, like
That's
drop.
large gaps. Yeah.
But like, if you go in the middle of the draft and you even go in like just rank the centers. Like you have Creed Humphrey and you had Jason Kelsey and you have Frank Ragnow, like you have these top centers, but like once you get to like 6 through like 22, like dude, there is not a big difference between like the
Right.
6th best center and the 22nd best center. The Steelers just haven't found the sweet spot yet. And so really I think they just need to get solid play there. And so I've been asked this many times if it came down to Mims versus Barton or Latham versus JPJ or someone like that, I'm taking the tackle.
Yeah. And tackle's, a more important and prominent position on the offensive line. So, I mean, that makes sense in today's game. Take some comments and then we'll get on out of here. Reggie says, if they're not giving Fields every chance to be the guy, it's time to fire. I wouldn't go that far for fire the entire staff, but I would like to see Justin Fields get, in my mind, and I could be wrong, I think that Mike Tomlin would like to see Justin Fields win the job. I think that would be my guess.
I don't know if you would like to see him win it, but I will say this. I think there's going to be a very legitimate chance for him to win it. Like, I don't think this is a sham competition. I believe Mike Tomlin when he says Justin Fields will have a chance to compete because Kenny Pickett was going to have a chance to compete.
Yeah.
That's legit. Like if Kenny Pickett had stayed and not, prefer to trade out and express that, Kenny Pickett would have had a chance to win that job.
Yeah.
So Justin Fields is going to have a chance to win that job. There's no chance that he's not going to.
All right. M. Spark says Russ can bring up the bacon with a good run game and great defense. Fields has potential. Ride the yoke and learn. Yeah, I mean, like I said, there is a world where Fields maybe doesn't start at all. I wonder. Let me sidetrack here for a minute. Do you think that even if Fields isn't the starter, there could be a Justin Fields package for a select handful of snaps per game?
Yes,
100%. I think so too.
He's such a dynamic runner. I feel like they kind of would be doing a disservice, especially with Arthur Smith having this really nifty QB run game in his playbook. We saw what he did with Marcus Mariota. So Justin Fields is more dynamic, faster at that point than Marcus Mariota was. So yeah. I can see that. And again, I don't think it would be shocking at all if Justin Fields started a significant amount of games and played a lot of snaps this year. I do think though that Russ is really going to have to go off the deep end completely or maybe get hurt. I mean, we have seen that has been an issue before with Russ. Not last year, but the year before that, he had a lat injury, suffered a finger injury the year before. So Russ gets injured. I mean, that changes the equation because I think at that point, Fields probably, I think Fields plays like I think Fields is going to end up keeping the job.
I agree. And I mean, Steelers fans know, especially after last season, take the preseason with a grain of salt, but depending on how much they play Russ and how much they play Justin Fields, like if Fields just looks that much better, and it's hard for quarterbacks to look bad in camp. We know that. But, if Fields is just it's evident that, oh yeah, there's something there that we can really tap into, then I don't know, man. I think that, Tomlin really likes him. And I agree with you. There's a real solid chance that, he does become QB1 before week 1. If I had to bet, I'd still say it's going to be Russ. And if and when Fields does become the starter, it'll be after the season begins. But definitely a greater than zero chance that he just wins the job outright.
Yeah, I think there's a chance there. Again, I think Russ is the favorite to start week 1, but
Yeah,
I do expect at some point this year to see Justin Fields start a game. I do.
I agree.
I just think the play makes sense.
I agree too. Cooper Jean from Iowa, maybe. I mean, if that's the pick, I would assume it would be after a trade down in round 1 if Cooper DeJean's the pick. I don't know how I'd feel about that at 20, but if they do trade down with Arizona and that's the pick late in the round and they get another second round pick, then cool.
I mean, like, think about the options that would be there theoretically at 27. You have
Yeah,
centers, you have Tyler Guyton, maybe you have DeJean, Kool-Aid McKinstry, AD Mitchell. Like, it's an interesting crop. It's not, you're probably missing out on Mims and Latham and
sure.
Arnold and all of those guys, but like there's a chance none of those guys are even there at 20. Like if you get a real disaster board, you trading back to 27 and drafting one of those centers at that point, because one of Barton or JPJ will absolutely be on the board, if not both of them.
Yeah.
So I mean that makes a lot of sense to me. And DeJean also makes sense there. Just as a versatile kind of chess piece. Actually, he's a great fit for their defense.
Love it, love it. All right, Nick Farbaugh, tell the people what they can find from you on Steelers Now this week.
Yeah. You could follow me on X Twitter at FairbyFB and on Steelers Now, man. We're covering the draft real hard here. Profiles. Derek Bell's going to be writing a ton of stuff too over there, so make sure to check it out because NFL draft is going into hyper gear, and that's what we're really going to hammer home over the next few weeks before the draft. It's close, man. The draft is about
3 weeks away. Yeah. Love it, love it. Yeah, go follow the good people at Steelers Now, whether it be Nick, Alan Saunders, Derek Bell, Chris Ward, everybody over there doing great stuff. In terms of me, feature piece that I'm doing on Kalen Carson will be out this week on Touchdown Wire for USA Today, and then coming in the coming weeks before the NFL draft, so I'd say within the next week or two, the feature on Jamari Thrash from Louisville, that'll also be coming, and then follow our coverage of the Steelers over at Behind the Steel Curtain for SB Nation. Lots of Steelers coverage every day, whether it be the team, the draft, gearing up, especially for the draft in the next few weeks. Nick, it's always fun talking to you, buddy. We'll definitely do this throughout the offseason and once the CEO, we get to camp and preseason, everything like that. Very much looking forward to having you back very soon.
Yes, sir.
All right, guys. Thanks for tuning in to Black and Gold Breakdown. We will see you soon. Subscribe, like, do all that fun YouTube stuff. Until then.